What's popping, y'all? It looks like that even after a situation like an OD and a near brush with death at only the age of 20 years old, Clavicular hasn't learned anything. So first, how the whole thing started off was him nodding off.
When did you last take blues? You want natty? You want natty?
So after this, he gets brought into the hospital, gets carried off by his security guard. And we get all of these reports. And then the next day, he talks about, okay, it's time for me to get it together, guys.
I ain't going to be doing any more substances for a little while, hopefully for forever. But that means I can't really IRL stream anymore. So that's the thing. I really can't IRL stream. Because, as you guys know, I'm quite brutal without that shit. So that's, I think I have to figure something else out. I have to figure out a new method. Either practice mogging sober or just find a new form of content. I don't know.
Yet later that night, he pulls up to his grand opening of his club. You know, the show must go on. Business must go on.
Me, not you. You know what I mean? I said stop blocking the camera. They want to see me, not you.
So this was a club OT Genesis was performing at the opening night and Blueface was performing. So Whack 100 was definitely not lying when he said, yo, we cut a business deal, because those are two people that he's done a lot of business with in the past. But in the midst of all of this, people were saying like, yo, this guy, and I even said this in the previous video, this guy cannot stream and deliver the same level of content without those drugs for the rate, at the rate that he was previously. I think he could do it maybe one day a week, but 7 days a week, he can't. And the majority of these IRL streamers that you guys see, they are abusing stimulants. Now, this guy, he's just putting on everything under the sun, but even his parents, they would try to visit him, and this is just sad. Because it was even reported via TMZ, and we're going to get into why it was reported to TMZ, because they were the ones that broke the story of the overdose and the hospitalization outside of his community. They were the first official source. And it says here, Clavicular's post-overdose saga has taken another turn. They've learned that the streamer's own father flew across the country. His parents, he said he's from Hoboken, New Jersey. They're somewhere in the Northeast. They're well off, like good parents, and got completely iced out in order to stage an intervention. Sources familiar with the situation, who is the source familiar? We're going to talk about who I believe it is in a moment. Tells us Clavicular, Braden, had his dad, Ken, rush in from New Jersey after this week's scary hospitalization for a suspected overdose. The plan was for a serious face-to-face talk to push the Lux Maxer towards getting help. So a little bit of context between this guy and his parents. He was scheduled to do a Bimax, which is a double jaw surgery to, quote, ascend him, make him look better, and he had been putting that off. Before he blew up with the streaming stuff, he was going to do that for his content. And then he kept talking about trying to do it, but he wasn't able to leave the country or even go to the UK or Europe because his parents had heard about this and they held his passport, or they ripped his passport, or some situation like that. And too much things were going on. And I think he also realized that he didn't need this Bimax. Well, he never really needed it, but because you need to have like not even a malocclusion, you need to have like really severe problems to actually want to have a doctor recommend you do something like that. But he was just purely doing it for aesthetic reasons. So that's the situation with them. So his parents have been active in trying to, at least do their best in making sure that their child doesn't crash out. And then it says here, we're told Clav refused to even see him. And this is the thing, like this guy's parents didn't harm him growing up. When he was taking all these steroids, they tried to make it as hard as possible for him to not get them. His mom, I believe he said, was a bodybuilder, so she would throw them away, she would hide them. They did everything. This is why I think people are very insensitive when they say, oh man, parents' job, oh man, the parents must suck. Dude, the pull that the internet has on these kids is just, it's so much different than what these parents had when they were kids. And on top of that, how hard it is to raise a family. Now these guys, they had a bunch of money. He even said, yo, I came from a great family. I had a great spawn point. My parents were really well off. So he has nothing to complain about. He's the problem, or the holes that he fell into in the internet were the problem. But he would probably say the way that he was treated because of his appearance led to him going down these rabbit holes. But back in the day, people like him would have just become like into anime and Beyblade. And that was that. Those were the rabbit holes they found themselves in, if they were outcasts, if you want to call it that, which I don't think he ever was. And yeah, so Clavicular doesn't even want to see his own dad and says that he was busy and still planning to hit his already promoted club appearance at Baccarat Club, the same event he'd hyped before landing in the hospital just a day earlier, and where he was started partying with Blueface. Despite Clav telling viewers on a live stream, I wanted my dad to come because he was here, but he didn't come. Our sources say that's not the full story. His dad was never supposed to hit the club. He was there strictly out of concern after the OD scare. Instead, we're told the situation got so frustrating that Clav's father left Miami without ever getting the chance to say what he came to say, flying back to Jersey deeply worried about his son's health. As we reported, Clavicular was hospitalized, blah, blah, blah. And who I believe, in my opinion, is the person that gave this information to TMZ is none other than Mitchell Jackson, who we covered extensively in another video that I will try my best to remember and put it on a sticky note. No, I don't even have sticky notes. I don't know why. I almost lied to you guys. I just had to hold myself back. I just can't lie. I was like, okay, let me not cap. I'll try to do my best to remember to put it in the pinned comment. And this he's like a PR guy, a really, really good PR guy. And he would say in response to Joe Bernstein, who did the New York Times piece on Clavicular when he went and did the Fashion Week runway thing. So the guy that was following them around for the New York Times piece, which was a very detailed piece on Clavicular that wasn't biased in any way. This guy, Mitchell, he works with Candace Owens. He works with a lot of controversial figures. And he is somebody that is doing exactly what Clavicular needs. So what my opinion is that he leaked this information to TMZ in an attempt to get Clavicular to just like see the light. And he also stopped working with him because in this new piece on After the Overdose, done by the same guy that did the original New York Times piece, which was likely, in my opinion, proposed by Mitchell would say the following. On Thursday morning, Clavicular's publicist, Mitchell Jackson, said he would no longer represent the streamer unless he checked himself into treatment. We have given him an ultimatum, said Mr. Jackson, who has represented Clavicular for just a few months and is known for his roster of controversial clients. If he wants to get better, I'm happy to spend as much time as I need to get him the help he needs. I'm doing this as a plea for his health. There is a world of adults begging Braden to take this seriously. Braden is Clavicular. But he raised doubts as to whether he would be able to IRL stream. And this is where Clav says, I don't know. It's going to be brutal. I don't know if I can do this. I might need to mog sober, which is a clip that I played you guys from earlier. And then Mitchell says, he's an addict. I don't think he identifies that way, but I believe he's an addict. And this is exactly what somebody who cares about their client would do. And I think a lot of people, they're just like, yo, why was his homie telling him, like, do you want an addy? That's not what you're supposed to tell the guy. This is the same thing that I've seen happen with rappers. If you are somebody, in this case, Mitchell is very well equipped because if he pulls back and doesn't help Clavicular, the negative press that Clavicular would have gotten would have been out of control. When that whole like Clubacost situation, that could have gone a completely different direction had he not had Mitchell on his team. This guy is a cutthroat killer at his job. But what he can also do is put out these stories that make Clavicular look like a loser, a terrible son, and a hater of anybody that's trying to help him to his audience, which is really the only thing that Clavicular cares about maintaining right now. Otherwise, if you're somebody like one of Clavicular's homies or one of his, quote, jesters, as he likes to call them, and you're like, yo, you got to stop doing this. He's going to tell you, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm not an addict, said by every addict under the sun. And he's just going to kick you to the curb. So it's in your best interest to not try to help him. But this is the thing. If you do try to help him, you are inevitably going to get fired or kicked out because you're bad vibes. And then you're so far away from him, you can't help him anymore. So this is really the only guy. A security, he can just hire another security. This is the only guy that can really do something. This is how you know he cares about him. He would just be trying to clean this up if he only cared about his job and making money. He wouldn't have given this information about the dad coming to TMZ, allegedly. That's just my opinion and what I think he did. And this guy actually cares about him, and I do think this guy needs to get it together. You cannot be doing all of these substances. It's just, we've seen it. This guy's 20 years old. One of the people that he thought was really cool was Ziz, who was the Australian, like, really legend bodybuilder, physique guy, content creator, like one of the OGs of fitness YouTube. He passed away at like 21, 22. And that was because he had like an underlying heart condition, but he was mixing the anabolic steroids with party drugs. And then he went into a sauna and he just had a heart attack. And in that quickly. And this guy, Clavicular, he is mixing a lot more than that. And sure, he will say things like, nah, I get my blood work checked. I know what I'm doing. But it's that level of hubris that usually leads people to make errors like this. Because if he knew what he was doing, he wouldn't have fell over like that. But let me know what y'all think in the comments. I think this speaks volumes about this guy as a publicist and a PR guy. And it's not very often you see somebody moving in this manner and using their connections to actually try to speak some sense into their client. So much respect to this guy. Hey, let me know, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. And I'm going to see y'all in the next one.